And welcome back to another episode of Code to Cloud. This week, I've got my good friend, Phil Burns. Phil, how's it going, man?
Good, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on. This should be a lot of fun.
It will be a lot of fun if you're involved, right? You're a bit of a wild card. I kind of like that. But yeah, do you just want to quickly introduce yourself? Tell folks who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Philip. I run a company called Tech Thursday, and so largely Tech Thursday we host panels meant to bring together the tech community across Canada. So we host events in Ottawa, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary. We've been running them for about 3 years. We've had about 25,000 folks come out to our event so far. And sort of an interesting background. We started from Neo Financial. I was working there. I was leading the talent marketing team. And that's why we started the events, really to hire people. But we looked around and said, look, we're not hiring anymore, but the events are revenue positive. This could be its own company. So it's been about a year and a half since we've been running Tech Thursday full time. And it's been a lot of fun and trying to grow and continue the momentum.
Yeah, when I first heard about you guys, I was speaking to a buddy of mine, and I run some, not on the scale that you run, right? But I run some events in the city as well. And they were like, yeah, this guy, Phil, he runs one every week. And I was like, how? How does he run an event every week, right? I was like, that's an achievement in itself. But yeah, like we connected a little bit over a year ago, and I've attended some of the Tech Thursday events, and it's just a different perspective,
Yeah.
right? It's not just technology. It's also the business perspective, the ecosystem, the way that investors operate, what's happening in your particular area of the world. But I really feel like it's advocating as well what's happening here in Western Canada, right? We're both based out of the Calgary area, and it's advocating everything that's good about Alberta, right? So
Yeah. Well,
when when it,
I'm glad to hear you say that. I was at an event yesterday, and someone said, "Yeah, I came out for the first time." What struck me so much about Tech Thursday is like how focused everyone was. Like there was like 200 people in the room, and they just wanted to learn. I think it was an event that you were at too, and I think when you talk about weekly, that seems nearly impossible for us. What we've tried to do is like actually events are kind of easy when you strip away, when you have the venue and you have the time and place. That's like almost half of it. And then after that, we just have to figure out, okay, what's the topic of conversation and who's talking. And then you can sort of like figure that out and, market and get people there. But we've tried to strip away everything from our events in terms of like, what are like almost superfluous ways that, or reasons that someone would come to an event. We want to make sure they're like only coming for either the networking or the topic of conversation, like who they're meeting or what they're learning. And through the course of having done that for about a couple of years, um, now our audience is really focused and the folks that we want there, right? They're eager to learn, they're eager to meet new people, and we've sort of stripped away or like almost thought about events in first principles. So I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, you sort of had a similar experience at our events.
yeah, I completely agree. Like running events, I book the date and I book the venue, and then the rest sort of happens, right? It's about the quality of what you put on, and a lot of people overthink it. But with you guys, what I noticed was you've got like the logistics sort of laid out, and it's all about the quality about what you put on stage, right? And the kind of audience that you've got. Um, but yeah, I mean, if we talk about like Western Canada and the tech ecosystem, I mean, I've been here now nearly 3.5 years in Canada, especially in the West. What opportunities are you seeing? What challenges are being tackled from everybody that you've met, kind of thing, and everything you've experienced? What is it you've been seeing?
Yeah, it's like it's actually a really fascinating time, I think, to be in Western Canada for like a few reasons. I think there is a real true sense of like almost pioneering that exists in the culture. Uh, and you have a lot of folks who are really well positioned to go off on their own and start really remarkable companies and well positioned both in terms of like have the experience to be incredible founders, have like, worked early stage at companies who have now like grown. Like you're seeing early employees at Neo or at some of these like larger companies who have either exited or had big raises now go off and do their own thing, but also really well positioned um, in terms of like maybe their stage of life, like in terms of maybe not owning a mortgage or at least a mortgage with like crippling payments. Like it is a more affordable place to live in Western Canada than Toronto or Vancouver. And so over Stampede, there's a bunch of folks who came to Calgary from Toronto, and I was talking with them, and he was going like, what the heck is happening? Like, how come all like everyone here is like a founder, and in Toronto, like none of my friends are founders. And I think it's because like we are really well positioned to say, well, okay, it's my turn now. I don't need to like, somehow find exorbitant amounts of money to like make my mortgage payment. I can go off on my own and do it. And so um, now we're at a time where a lot of folks are starting. Um, I'm seeing a lot of folks start companies, and the coolest companies to me that I'm seeing come up are folks who are almost validating a problem and finding a customer before they even built the product. And so I've been sitting across from a friend of mine over the last 4 months as he's like been consulting for some company in New York. On the side though, he's sort of like tinkering with this idea and trying to build it. And he essentially took a month to like vibe code a prototype, showed it to an early customer, and by the end of the call, they were saying like, "Let me use this, please, right now." He's going like, "It's not even built. It like this is just kind of like a prototype MVP." They're like, "No, we don't care. We want to use it." And that was probably like 2 months ago, and since then have onboarded some of the largest like customers in this space, and like offers to buy at like insane prices, and so I think some of the most exciting now your sort of product development cycles are so small, and your speed of velocity to launch can be so quick that you really can go out and sell a product before you've even built it, or like at the very least like before you have like a fully functioning model. And so I think the best entrepreneurs right now are understanding what that product needs to be, selling it, and then going off and building it and sort of scaling from there. So you're seeing a lot of like bootstrap success, I think, too. That's pretty exciting.
I That was the first thing I noticed, especially when I moved to Alberta. Was I don't know, it's like sort of in the culture or in the creed of Alberta. It's pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Like
Yeah,
they break ground first, regardless of the industry. And I just feel like there's this energy here where like you don't ask for permission.
yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, and you can't really be asking for permission in like entrepreneurship entrepreneurship or tech, right? It's the early days of Alberta are folks who just took bets on that this land could be sort of ranchable, and you could have these cool stories of a friend of mine, John Whitaker, wrote this book on one of the like early pioneers of Alberta, and just these really cool stories of someone saying, you know what, screw it, like I'm going to buy 3,000 heads of cattle and drive them up from Texas. Alberta's going to be Alberta's going to be a place where ranchers come and gather, and we're going to sort of breed these cattle and create an industry here. So it really was like this true pioneering space. And when you look at like how long ago that was like 1885, not really that long time. That's obviously like right around when Canada became a country, but at the same time, it is still pretty recent history in the grand scale of things. So very true, I think, to what remains in our culture.
Yeah, I completely agree. I remember coming out here in 2017, and like I've been doing what we'd say like cloud platforms and that kind of thing right over in Europe. And I remember landing and folks poster just dropped there. I remember landing and meeting with CTOs, right, in bigger organizations, right, and basically trying to get a grasp of how things work out here, right, in terms of landscape. And I remember them telling me, well, we don't do this cloud thing. We're stuck. I wouldn't say we're stuck, right? But like we're still doing things that we always did it that way. Now, when I actually moved here, it was like a completely different place. There's loads of engineering talent now. The tech ecosystem is just like on fire, and it just keeps growing and growing year on year. We've got communities that we've never had before. And to your point, like I've never seen so many startups. And we've got these centralized hubs as well that encourage that as well. Like the ideas aren't trampled on. And to your point with the ranches, right? It's like you're sort of expected to take the bet, right? And I feel like that's attracting global talent as well, right? Into the province.
Yeah, I mean, there's we had a panel the other day on the productivity crisis in Canada, and Jeff Adamson, who was one of the founders of Neo, had this take that stuck with me since of we really have to start reshifting our ideas around culture and risk taking in Canada. Um, there's something like one of the other panelists as well sort of went through the list of Canadian values, and yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, number one is respect. Number two is multiculturalism. Number three is like, loving your neighbor or something. And all the way down at the bottom of the list at like 2% was hard work and work ethic in terms of like values of being a Canadian. And Jeff's take was we really have to shift the narrative around failure, where for so long in Canada, failure has been seen as a black mark, right? That if you go off and do your own thing and it doesn't go well, that's no one should hire you, or you're, that's sort of a black mark. Versus in the States, you go off and you fail. That's really like a badge of honor. Like I tried, I was able to do it for a bit of time. I learned way more than I could have learned elsewhere. Um, and now you re-enter the job market as way more valuable, having gone off and tried and hustled. Um, and in Canada, I think you have like um, it's we have so many incumbents across so many industries that I think we often see the risky thing as going off and doing your own thing, but we got to start looking at risk as like maybe it is risky to spend 25 years in your career working at Deloitte and working for like a a pay raise or a job that you don't necessarily even want, or like is not so different than where you're at now. And maybe that is more risky than going off and trying, and like the risk is in not doing something. And I think as Canadians, we have to start shifting our mindset. And I think Alberta's maybe at the forefront of starting to see the real risk in not going out and trying something.
So it's similar in Great Britain as well. The British culture is
Okay.
stay on. I probably that's where it's from, right? Originally, but like it's sort of like if I think back to all the decisions I've made in my career and the people I had around me or the mentors that I had me, they thought I was crazy. But the
Yeah.
biggest gains I've made was when I took a risk, right? Because I similar mindset. I was like, well, I'd probably regret if I didn't do it. Like I didn't want to be 10 years down the road and then go, I should have, could have, would have, right? Um, Sometimes you just got to execute. Especially when maybe economies aren't so strong, this is a great opportunity to go out there and build something. And that's something that I've seen from all walks of life out here as well, that like this province is really set up for, if we just think of like trades, right? It's not startups or anything, but that's encouraged. Yeah, how many trades people do we see that have got their own organizations and are thriving in the province, right? And the same mentality can be applied to business as well. And to your point, if you go and run your own thing, you're going to have more insight than the one job that you would have had in an organization, right? So yeah, like you said, in the States, like in the Bay Area, it's how many companies have you owned, right?
Right.
If you were going for a job interview, right? So yeah, I'm completely on board with that. But yeah, I wanted to sort of segue a little bit as well. So we obviously got the culture down. We're heading in the right direction, and this is breaking boundaries, right? Especially where we live. But how are you seeing AI in our market? How's that being a disruptor?
Yeah. Um, well, I think you're certainly seeing it. Um, Again, you're seeing it because, like I said, you can now like build products really quickly, and I think that's exciting. Um, on maybe the more like disruptive to like the labor force, you're certainly seeing like a huge decrease in junior developer roles and presumably like junior roles across the board. Um, and which kind of goes back to like yeah, like now when the economy isn't so good, this should be your time of like, it should be almost more obvious that like, oh, it's probably very risky for me to stay in one of these big organizations and possibly sort of be let go because I'm, replaced by AI. What a great time to go and try and start my own business and sort of like de-risk um, having your job at sort of the helm of this technology. But I think AI is in terms of like within companies, you're starting to see its like application. I don't know if you're starting to see like its application at scale. You're probably starting to see like its application, which is causing hesitancy to hire or bring on other folks. I'm not sure if it is like really replacing that many jobs right now. It's maybe replacing like we would rather learn how to train an AI right now with the hopes that in 3 months it's going to be really efficient versus like, oh, we would rather like train an intern or a junior developer for 3 months with the hopes that it's going to like start writing code or they're going to start writing code. Sorry. Um, and so internally, I think you're starting to see companies shift towards like training models um, instead of hiring talent. And then startups are starting to build really really great companies using AI. I think the other like interesting space in Calgary, in Alberta more generally, in Western Canada, is um, the intersection here between AI and energy as well. Are we able to sort of um, use clean energy, um, either solar or nuclear or even like natural gas to power data centers and sell compute and be sort of a compute superpower by way of like energy. I think is going to be a really interesting play that we see people move into in the next couple of years. So I'm really interested to see how that sort of develops here as we sort of um, build out our sort of um, like obviously energy infrastructure is already built out, but there's a lot we can do in terms of clean energy, in terms of renewables, in terms of like net zero, and how do we sort of turn that into compute possibly like an entire supply chain right here in Alberta.
We've definitely got the land.
Yeah.
That's why, I can't believe how big this province is, right? It's bigger than my home country. It's it's very true. Like it's this is huge, dude. I think like if I drove from one end of the United Kingdom to the top of Scotland, I mean it's like 500 miles, which would be about what 700, 800 kilometers. Like you could just keep going in
Yeah, yeah,
Alberta, right?
yeah,
So we've definitely got the land to build these big data centers, right? And out the way as well, right? Which is great. So big flat pieces of land. And I completely agree. It's like, what's next? Like, so we supply energy to the world and now we can supply compute to the world, right? So no matter what it is. So what's your perspective on the wider Canadian tech landscape? You mentioned before earlier in the episode that sounds like you travel a lot. You got Ottawa, right? Was it Toronto and Edmonton and Calgary? Let me know if I've missed any there. But yeah, like what are you seeing? Is there any differences in terms of what people are proposing? Like, what's the approaches people are taking, or what are they building different things?
there are huge differences, I think, both like culturally. um I think that's also like one of our goals internally at Tech Thursday is as we continue to launch more and more of these cities is like how do we break down these barriers between traditionally very insular tech communities across Canada? Like it strikes me that a lot of companies, but also like a lot of ecosystem supports are sort of duplicating themselves where they'll only serve Ottawa or they'll only serve Waterloo or Winnipeg and it I think we could be a lot more efficient in terms of like how we're spending our money to support these founders. If we were to just look a bit more or stop being as siloed across these tech communities. But certainly like the cultures are different, the communities are remarkably different. Um, and then what they're building is also very different and interesting. You're seeing like Calgary, Winnipeg, some pretty cool ag tech companies coming up, and also some cool like um, AI companies coming up as well. Um, I love the like life sciences company, a really cool life sciences company out of Edmonton. Um, but I think, yeah, broadly across Canada, um, Toronto is obviously really growing, and I think that's an ecosystem that everyone should be looking at in terms of um, how they've sort of hit a critical mass of like startups and investors that are all kind of working together. And um, so yeah, I think across Canada, um, it's a very interesting time to be in tech. And there's some really cool cities. Apparently, also Newfoundland. Newfoundland is like, I got to go to Newfoundland because apparently it's like an anomaly where there's some really cool AI companies that are coming up in Newfoundland, and so that apparently is where we should be going if we want to see what is unique and different.
I that sounds like a road trip. It sounds pretty cool.
I mean,
I
that would be, if you think about how much bigger Canada is than the UK, going to Newfoundland would be, that's like so far away from us right now,
continent
Kevin. Yeah,
shift,
it's
right?
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, like whenever we have to get a flight back home, it takes us like 6 hours just to leave Canada, right? So
Yeah.
5 or 6 hours to leave Canada. But yeah, going over Newfoundland. But I want to go to Newfoundland because it's by the ocean as well, right? It'd be great to see what's happening there, right? In these pockets of like of gold, right? That are happening in terms of innovation and how they're building resources together. It'd be quite intriguing. But yeah, so so from a community point of view, when did you get the idea for like Tech Thursdays? Was it like when I landed here, I had the similar impression that there was pockets, but there was nothing united. And that sounds like what you're trying to do, right? Is it's better to be together than having these pockets here, there, and everywhere, right? So how did it all start?
Yeah, totally. So as I mentioned, like we used to be a part of Neo Financial Tech Thursday. It was just an event series. And so it started because we were looking around. I was always based out of Calgary. I'm from Winnipeg originally, but moved to Calgary about 5 years ago. And so I was back in Winnipeg talking with the managing director of the Neo office in Winnipeg. And we were talking about how do we hire more people into that office there that we had. Um, and at the time it was just coming out of the pandemic, and there were like just really largely no events in the tech community in Winnipeg um, that were in person, bringing folks together. And for us, we really saw being in person as a competitive advantage against the big banks. And so we wanted to move really quickly. And so we wanted our events to be in person. And so we sort of brought everyone together and said, look, um, you guys are hosting events virtually, or you guys are community groups, or you guys are other startups. Um, we're going to foot the bill for a venue every single week to bring people together in person. And whenever you guys want to host an event with us, just let us know, and we'll give you the space. You guys can like, set your own panel, and we'll provide it for you. And we'll just have a continuous space for the ecosystem to meet. And so that's actually how we ended up starting. And it started super slow. There was like 5 or 10 people that would show up, and we like chose some like strange venues to do it in. Like, we chose like a brewery, and they would be like cleaning the tanks, and we'd like be getting sprayed with like, brewery water as we were like trying to, learn about this cool new company. Um, and so we finally found our footing at this place called the King's Head Pub in Winnipeg, and we started meeting there, and our events started to grow, and rapidly became 50 or 80, and a bunch more folks showing up more regularly. Um, and now it's about 100 people every week in Winnipeg. Um, and in Calgary, our strategy was a little bit more focused on just going to other events that were occurring, because there were more events that were occurring. But um, as we were doing that, we sort of looked around and said, well, there's a lot of like pitch competitions. There's a lot of hiring fairs. There's not necessarily a lot of events that bring together like senior members of senior members of the tech community, like ultimately folks we wanted to hire. And so how do we get like senior devs to want to come out? How do we get, senior marketers to come out? It wasn't necessarily for investors or founders. It was more for, like, can we put together a panel on like GraphQL versus REST APIs, and have like a bit of a debate on stage, and will that attract senior developers? Or, can we do like the good, the bad, the ugly of go-to-market strategies and start to create a bit of a community around marketers in Calgary and the folks who really are part of building great companies across great tech companies across these cities. Um, and so that's sort of the impetus between us launching here in Calgary as well. Was we also saw the gap here in Calgary for what we were doing, and so brought it here um, about 2 years ago now, a little bit more than 2 years ago now.
That's awesome. That's a great way to attract devs as well, especially if there's a debate about technology, right?
There you
Get a
go.
couple of get a couple of engineers on stage, and that's it.
Yeah,
That would have been that would have been interesting to see. So with that in mind, like we've been, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this yet. I don't know if you've announced it, but we've been working on something in the background a little bit, right? Around vibe coding. So it
yeah,
feels like, should we talk about that a little bit about how that's going to work? I know we're still trying to make it up at the moment, right? It's probably the best way, right? But the intention's there, right?
this is.
So
I mean, this is what I'm talking about: is selling something before it's built. We
this
might
is
as
it.
well. Yeah,
I literally, this is what happened, right? A few weeks ago, I get pinged. Hey, dude, do you want to do a vibe coding thing with me? Yeah, why not? But literally, that's how it worked, right?
yeah,
And we met yesterday or the day before, and we started to create ideas about how it's going to look, right? But then I found out it's going to be running across multiple cities. Do you just want to talk high level what it's
yeah.
about, what we're trying
Totally.
to achieve?
I mean, high level. I think with vibe coding and with this idea of like, so we've hosted a couple now. We hosted one in Winnipeg and one in Calgary. These like 2 hour interactive vibe coding sessions where we'll bring someone in and essentially they'll act as kind of a mentor and to like folks in the room if you're a senior developer and you want to like spend some time jamming or junior or you've never built a product before, you could come bring your laptop and like learn how to vibe code and this person would like show you the tools and help you build the prompts and show you how to do that. And in both cases, like people were building incredible stuff. So, some was just like kind of like mock-ups or front ends that didn't actually work. Some like were fully functioning like products that you could use. Um, so super cool to see what people made. Like some firefighter who's never built a product before came out to our event and built this like um, tool where you could like enter in an area, like enter in like any sort of geography, and it would tell you the fire risk and like how recently there was a fire and what like active alerts there are in that area, which is super cool. And it was fully functioning as well. Um, and so kind of it sparked the idea of like, well, what would happen if we had like 10 hours? What could we do now? And kind of like the heyday of hackathons, which was like maybe like in Canada, like Hack the North in like 2014 or 2015, which was like a bunch of like senior devs and I'm biased, but I remember me going to Hack the North in 2015 as like a high schooler, and I was like a shit coder, but I somehow got in, and we built something, and then we go to present, and it's like Sam Altman that we're presenting to, and so we pitched Sam Altman at Hack the North. And so to me, I think like 2015 hackathons are like the heyday of like when hackathons were still cool maybe, and they're still cool now, but it's more like geared towards like a student audience. And so to us, I think that sparked the idea of, can we bring back the heyday of hackathons? It doesn't have to be 48 hours anymore. It can be 10 hours. Let's just build really cool stuff within a 10-hour window and make it super cool. And so I think you had the great idea of like, let's find some sort of problem statement that will be really motivating. And I think we're getting close of like something around the idea of like just simply solving the productivity crisis in Canada and just see what people make. And the idea also is like, can we run it concurrently across Canada? So certainly in Winnipeg and Calgary we can do, but maybe we can add Toronto too, or some of these other cities that Tech Thursday is in right now.
All right, bringing back the magic of the hackathon, right? Engineering, like it's
Yeah,
already starting to feel like pretty magical. Like I was talking to my team about it, and they were like, "What have you volunteered us for an hour?" Right? And I'm like, "Well, you're gonna love it, right? You're gonna sit in the room, and we're gonna create things and build things, right? And then or we're going to coach people, or again, it's another great networking session as well. You're meeting people out of your ecosystem that you may never have met
Yeah,
before, right? But then you're also like practicing, like, this is what I built, and showcasing it as well.
yeah,
So I can just imagine, man, all the caffeine, pizzas. I don't know what you've got planned, right? But like, it's going to be
yeah.
pretty awesome,
I
right?
mean, might as
So,
well have a couple beers too. That's what was
well,
cool
yeah,
about like the interactive vibe coding session was like you should have these like killer devs with a beer, just kind of like coding, chatting people up, helping people out, and they loved it, right? So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to you guys volunteering too for this.
I know, right? It's totally up our street, totally.
Sweet.
So just on is like, there's some of the last questions I've got, right? Um, you obviously you mentioned a couple of startups before, but which is one that you've like met this year or you've observed this year, and you're like, that's one to watch, or that was just like you were just blown away about what they were doing, right? And you just thought that was really interesting, or you thought what they were building was pretty cool.
Yeah. So Pure Lend is the company I was sort of mentioning before. That it was buddy who's built this tool, which is really like document verification for mortgages, which is not, I guess, super sexy, but it is like this great application of AI and like an opportunity where you can probably enter any market right now and find somewhere to save someone like 45 minutes and build a company there. And that's kind of what he's doing. So I think that's a really cool company, and I think it's also really cool because it's a bit of a indication, I think, of where other exciting companies are going to come from. They might end up raising, a round so that they can grow a bit faster, but it's also just like a high, like immediate sort of revenue company that you could actually just reinvest that revenue into your growth and just bootstrap all the way and create like a company that you own 100% of, right? You and your co-founders. So I think that's a really exciting company. A couple of others are like, I am just such a big fan of these like companies now who are kind of doing it without who have sort of bootstrapped. Fueled is a really exciting company, I think, in Calgary. They're like the Kijiji for large oil and gas equipment, and they're actually killing it. There's like no investors, just them. They have a team of about 20. They're installing like a Japanese library in their in their office that I'm gonna check out next week. So they're super cool. Yeah, and then I guess the folks at like Ultimari and Josh, I really like what they're up to. And maybe I'll shout out my friends in Winnipeg. There's a company called Tave, and they've built. I'm also a big fan of like hardware companies. I think like hardware companies are where it's at. They just raised their Series A Y Combinator company, but essentially what they're up to is uh, if you're a if you're a restaurant or bar, Tave will come in and basically they will like take the input from your cable, from like your TV source. Um, it goes into this box, which will detect the ads that are running and then sort of send it to the TV. And so as you're watching like a football game or a hockey game and you're in Earl's, instead of it running like a Boston Pizza commercial, they can run like a commercial for what's on special or what dessert is on, or like Bacardi can pay for ads on in TAVE, and so they're crushing it. They're like across the states and just launched in Winnipeg as well, their hometown, and so they're great and just raised I think like I forget the number, but they did just raise a pretty big Series A, which is pretty exciting.
That's wild. So it like interrupts the live TV advert and then localizes whatever they're trying to represent, right, inside the establishment. That is a really smart idea,
Yeah.
right? If you think about it, like, it's pretty simple, but like it's pretty smart as well, right? And it's all custom hardware that they develop and build.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
say it's just like switching the channel, right? That's kinda how they get around any sort of
Yeah.
legality, but, um, Yeah, it's super cool. I think right now there's some Tech Thursday ads running in Winnipeg, which I'm all about.
So I'm going to Winnipeg for the first time this
Nice.
weekend. I'm presenting at Dev Prairie Con. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's my first like trip to Winnipeg. Can't wait to see what it's like. I'll have to try and check it out if I'm in the area. See
That'd be
if I'll
awesome.
take a snapshot, right? Take a snap if there's a Tech Thursday ad running inside the bar.
That'd be great.
Okay, well, that was amazing. I really enjoyed that conversation. I just wanted to obviously round this up, but where's the best place for folks to find you, Phil, and Tech Thursdays and everything else?
Yeah, totally. So you can find me on LinkedIn. So Philippe Burns on LinkedIn and add me there, connect with me there. Um, and then we also run some newsletters. The Calgary Tech newsletter, the Winnipeg Tech newsletter. So we post like recaps of our events. We'll also post some like news that's happening in the cities. Um, so if you're in Ottawa, Edmonton, Winnipeg, or Calgary, we're running some newsletters, and so subscribe to those and follow us there.
Awesome. We'll include that in the show notes as well for the episode, right? So folks can find out where you're at as well. Make it a little bit easier.
That's
But
awesome.
again, I just want to thank you for coming on. I know you're a very busy guy. You're always thinking of something next to do, right? And thinking up of these ideas, right? So again, thanks again to our listeners. If you've liked what you've been listening to, don't forget to like and subscribe or leave a comment in your favorite podcast app. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Cool. Thanks so much, Kevin. I'll see you at the hackathon.
I know, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. All right. Goodbye for now.